Welcome to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path.
Alex!
Jason.
What is going on? How are you enjoying the weather outside? It's freezing now here.
It's cold.
Yes.
There's an interesting balance when you walk outside in New Mexico is that the sun is still hot.
Yes.
But the air is ice crisp cold.
Yes.
So you're like, should I wear a jacket, short sleeve, long sleeve? I'm completely unsure of myself.
Yeah, it's crazy in the morning when you run because you get the cold air in.
Yeah.
But then you can feel the heat coming from the sun.
Yeah.
So you could almost not have a jacket on or anything, have shorts and a t-shirt on because once you start sweating, but you're still, when you suck in that cold air, it's interesting.
That is, that's like an interesting sort of what other people would say is very first party data.
Yes.
Is knowing how dynamic I am with my behaviors as the weather changes very dynamically.
Right. So why should we care about first party data?
Well, you and I have been touting this for years, and this article's talking about it right now. Source data, right? It's going to the primary source. The reason you do that, you should care about that first party data, is because, first of all, from a legal standpoint, all the governments are pushing to give people back control of that information, where secondary parties and tertiary parties are not going to have the ability to move that data for you. You're going to end up taking all the control of that. I mean, that's the model we've designed for TARTLE. Right. And many companies have said, it's a big priority for us to focus on, data privacy laws. Well, of course it is. You have to figure it out because your entire model of your business is the opposite of what these governments are pushing. So yes, it's an obvious priority for you, and you have to kind of pseudo work how your company fundamentally operates to move into this new paradigm.
Well, I know companies are very, because we talked about last week about that proposition in California, and they had passed some laws, and then of course they talked about
Prop 24.
They talked about Spotify and Google, being able to maneuver around it.
Yeah.
So I imagine there's legal teams that are saying, okay, what's the new law? What's the new threat? How can we move around this to be able to still collect?
That's the thing. How do we bend around the rules?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The problem is all these other firms, they're so focused on it because they know it's going to cripple their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the fundamental base level, they weren't designed to operate with that sort of sovereignty to the individual. Their idea is like, we're going to have a very siloed approach. We're going to collect everything and hold it, and we're going to be the one that reaps the benefit. Now what we're seeing is that control is becoming decentralized with data. And in doing so, as you decentralize control, you move it away from those businesses and give it back to the individual, they are then required to be responsible for that information. And that responsibility is going to require a tool for its management. And the tool for that management is something called TARTLE. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yes.
Right? But that's the transition that's happening. And, legal changes are, policies pushing things in that direction, but it's not very difficult to adopt or work with those policies if you're working at a very human level in the first place.
So why can't capitalism figure this out on its own without government?
Because capitalism isn't designed in itself to benefit everybody. There's socialism,
right?
There's capitalism, right? But then you have this weird middle ground that you're looking at with decentralization. Now, everybody themselves can be their own best capitalist, right? But that's going to require responsibility. And that means it's not about giving the power, just to like a 1% profile.
Right.
It's about giving the power back to the 99%. So how is it that you can still create, economic gain, but giving power and sovereignty back to individuals to do that themselves? So how do you still keep those economic models actually going? And that's a new sort of shift that people need to figure out. And that's going to be happening with that data. Data is the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a valuable market for so many companies because they want insights on what we do. They want that first party information.
Right.
Because that can tell me about those behaviors. If I'm going on that run, the weather's changing. Do I rip my jacket off? Am I sweating?
Am I in Pennsylvania and I'm voting and I voted for Biden or Trump?
Yeah.
And go directly to that person and ask them that.
And you can go, and now the conversation is not, I'm going to talk to a business or a business of a business about a person.
Right.
I'm going to go have the conversation with the person.
Right.
Right. So don't go to these other places to buy the info. Go directly through TARTLE to purchase the information from that individual. You get that first party data. We call it source data. It's a very primary thing. So when you go to do research, right, you always want to find out what the source is.
Right.
Like you're citing your sources. Well, that source is the person. They are the citation of all that data. They are the provenance of its lineage, right? So that's what the focus is going to be on. That's the shift. And that can only occur with that decentralization, but people also taking responsibility over the things they create. And we might see something interesting that policy will push so hard that all the control is given to people and then there's no momentum. People are like, well, now I have control of my information. Where does it go? What do I do with it?
Right. What would cause tech companies, would that would cause them to sputter too?
It would cause them to sputter.
Because now you're looking at, profits that we've been used to.
They can't, from a profiteering standpoint, it would slow them down. Mm-hmm. From a business operations standpoint, it would slow them down because their analysis would slow. They otherwise couldn't get information for their product or service at the same rate they had it before. And it's not like that. Here's an interesting dynamic to this. They are getting a lot of information very quickly, but it's not primary, information.
Yes.
So even if you did slow it down, you're getting source information, that first party data. And because you get that source information, it's far more valuable. So the rate at which you receive it doesn't have to be so instantaneous that you're used to. You can actually receive it at a slower rate, but you know that it is an absolute goldmine.
Yes, exactly. Because it would be like if somebody was, let's say somebody was wanting to buy a Ford truck, and you've used the example before, maybe they were changing a baby's diaper or something, and the Ford truck commercial went on from YouTube and they didn't hit skip.
Yeah,
because they were changing a diaper,
he's
watching
for 90% of the ad.
Yeah. Oh wow. So
let's push some dollars to that guy.
Yeah. Or either he had it on his phone and he was watching an Amazon show, but he was on his phone on YouTube too. So he went to set that down.
Yeah.
Because I know these marketing companies want us to have 3 screens.
Yeah.
A laptop, a phone, and a TV. That they can serve ads to all 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting this false data.
Yeah. When we look at people. The current, this is how I'd simplify this current model. Right now, you are the annuity stream for companies that use data.
I love that. That's a really good analogy.
You are the pipe that gives them the revenue. You are nothing but an asset to them.
That Tesla cannot run without that battery.
Correct. You are not an asset to yourself right now with your data. You are not your own annuity stream. Okay? That is being taken from you. There's no true value. There's no ethical, human, egalitarian value, equanimous value that you receive in the current model. So that shift is going to be a little bit harsh. But in order for you to take that annuity stream away from them and bring it back to yourself, you need to claim that ownership and you have to become very responsible. And you need a tool that is also responsible enough that matches fundamentally, philosophically, legally, those changes that are happening with society.
I like that.
And can you think of a tool that would be able to do that?
Only one,
right? And it's called TARTLE because that's the design. And that's, we may have been ahead of the game. Actually, we have been ahead of the game for quite some time, for many years now, but it's catching up.
Right.
And now we're here with this tool, delivering it to people and educating them on it. So now that they have that available option. If you've watched the movie, The Social Dilemma.
Yes.
How much time do you look at a picture? Again, it's what is the ethical approach? Do you look at someone as a human being or a number, right? Do you look at them as a revenue model or do you look at them as someone who's a living, conscious, breathing thing? Right now they've just looked at them as revenue models, right? And these companies don't exist unless they have advertisers paying into their models. That's social media is not social media, okay? It's just a very good billboard. It's a billboard for people to billboard themselves, to advertise themselves, and for companies to advertise themselves. Or companies to advertise themselves through other people's billboards.
Yes.
Okay? It's not truly a social interaction. It's a very false perspective of what society is and how transactions actually occur.
And I think, if you mentioned that documentary, and I don't want to get too heavy into that, but I can look at that documentary and people will understand it, but the draw is too big. It's only going to get worse. Where you take a child that has been raised on the internet, for me, if you missed a show, you had to wait till the
reruns
started.
I go, hold on,
you
where's TV
literally
Guide?
have a 3-year-old that knows how to operate an iPad very well.
Yeah.
On Amazon Fire or whatever, the little kids one they have. I've watched somebody in the store the other day just on demand,
Yes.
constantly. People recognize that there's a problem with social media, but I think it's too big and too much, there's too much addiction and dopamine hits on it that people will not give it up.
Well, that's all it is. And I think they made a quote. They made a quote in the film that a tool is only a tool if it sits there at rest and does not agitate you or cause you to have some sort of emotional response to use it. A tool only works when you want it to go work.
Yes.
When you choose to make that choice. And so at a psychological level, they were removing choice. And so when you look at primary data with what we're talking about in this article and how that should be the focus, this is what companies should be focused on, is getting that source information, that first party data. You have to appreciate someone's choice. You have to willingly give them that control. And at first it's going to be uncomfortable to give people that control over the information. But what you'll find is that you'll gain a much deeper value on the individual.
Yes.
Okay. They're going to be more trusting of you because you're coming to them and asking them directly for that information. It's not pulled from some black box and shared between these independent parties that you don't know who they are. In doing so, that makes people feel more comfortable and they'd be more willing to give you more insightful information because they're releasing it to you.
Yes, they're releasing it. Yeah.
Right?
I want to kind of we'll close in this. I want to kind of get philosophical for a second. Because you brought up that documentary, I know a lot of you guys have listened to it, whether it's going to the fridge because you're having a thought and in that thought, you don't like that thought, or there's an uncomfortable feeling of guilt, worry, or something that's inside of you.
Yeah.
So you disrupt that thought instead of dealing with the thought.
Yeah.
And a disruption is going to the fridge, grabbing this show after show where it automatically just goes to the next episode. And it causes us not to deal with the reality that's in us and what we need to accomplish.
That's fantastic. They had the guy in there that invented the infinite scroll.
Right.
It's more of like the infinite distraction.
Yes.
So it's peeled. This is the dichotomy of technology, which I'm a proponent against, where technology evolves at a rate drastically faster than society is evolving. What happens is the technology should be designed so that it elevates society, not distracts them from their own evolution. And that's what that technology is doing. And that's 100%. Why people have now begun to recognize the addiction. Someone who's an addict doesn't know they're a freaking addict.
Yes.
They're just doing the drug all the time because it's what they do, until someone comes in and be like, hey, you're hopped up on drugs all the time. You're whacked out of your mind, right? You have no control right now. You need to find that control within yourself. You need to recognize that this is not healthy for you. All right. And the only way you can do that is take responsibility of the situation. And that's to find technologies that actually elevate and push society forward. Don't distract yourself from your own evolution.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
We got heavy into
that was good.
Some data.
Yeah. All that first party data. Don't distract yourself.
Yeah. No partying, guys. It's COVID.
Yeah. No partying. Be responsible. Be responsible. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path. What's your data worth?
To measure representation in data.